When I wake, you 24, before my ankles hit the floor. Take a break, say thank you, Lord. Then I dip up out the door. Don't lack it, I can't afford. Built tough like a Ford. Pack the word like a sword. This a battle, this a war. For your mind, it's a war. For your time, it's a war. For your money, it's a war. This ain't funny, it's a war. For the kid, it's a war. For how you live, it's a war. For your focus, it's a war. We ain't joking, it's a war. Let's tell the squad to squad up. Let's uplift and lift God up. He laid down his life and got up. Rather we wins or lose, they not us. Can't tie us down or hold us back. Probably we holy strap. It's a war and we on attack. On point like we on up. Look, he feeling the breaks when I'm feeling so blank. When I sit and I think and I drain on my thoughts like I swim in a tank. And God's on me and I'm pulling my rank. Don't tell me I can't. Like a man with a tank, bro, I'm ready for the war. Though it's happening like Morse code. One day he gon' come knock at the door, so better get hit like a torso. When I wake, you 24, before my ankles hit the floor. Take a break, say thank you, Lord. Then I dip up out the door. Don't lack it, I can't afford. Built tough like a Ford. Pack the word like a sword. This a battle, this a war. For your mind, it's a war. For your time, it's a war. For your money, it's a war. This ain't funny, it's a war. For the kid, it's a war. For how you live, it's a war. For your focus, it's a war. We ain't joking, it's a war.
Yeah, it's a war. Gotta cut the tie, you feel a pull. Bible say the flee, let's keep it dead. Elevator, don't work, take a stairs. Gotta watch the world, it do the most. I'm just as radical in my approach. You can ask the kids who check on phones. Nah, don't unlock it, what's the code? I was once timid, now I'm bold. Bought my father business, I don't troll. Time to spread the G, I'm on go. Let her force it back and watch him grow. In the blood, I'm covered head to toe. Sacrifices made to save a soul. Trying to pack the kingdom, that's the goal. Down and be the lamb, not the goat.
When I wake, you 24, before my ankles hit the floor. Take a break, say thank you, Lord. Then I dip up out the door. Don't lack it, I can't afford. Built tough like a Ford. Pack the word like a sword. This a battle, this a war. For your mind, it's a war. For your time, it's a war. For your money, it's a war. This ain't funny, it's a war. For the kid, it's a war. For how you live, it's a war. For your focus, it's a war. We ain't joking, it's a war.
Fighting with a masquerade, war. The devil I eradicate. I'm a soldier for the Lord above. And for him, I'm a basket case. It's not to show I got the sword on me. Time to lock and load, I brought a whole army. That's squad control, we about to shift gears. Bring the Lord near, no more fear. War. And with a Bible verse, I could replace a curse and make a demon hurt. They gon' need a hearse, and I'ma need a shovel to put him in the dirt. And that's the way it works. War. Meeting with the Lord, that's one day. Gotta read more than Sunday. Rather be a victim of the faith than the face of disgrace. I'll be making a mistake.
When I wake, you 24, before my ankles hit the floor. Take a break, say thank you, Lord. Then I dip up out the door. Don't lack it, I can't afford. Built tough like a Ford. Pack the word like a sword. This a battle, this a war. For your mind, it's a war. For your time, it's a war. For your money, it's a war. This ain't funny, it's a war. For the kid, it's a war. For how you live, it's a war. For your focus, it's a war. We ain't joking, it's a war.
We're at war. We're at war. We're at war. We're at war. We're at war. We're at war. We're at war. We're at war.
Ladies and gentlemen, I can't talk. Wow, that's a heck of a way to start off the show. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Stelman Smith Jr., and this is the Unapologetic Apologists. And today we're actually going to be looking at the huge debate, the mega debate between Andrew Wilson and Candace Owens that actually happened 6 days ago. We are going to be trying to evaluate it from a slightly different perspective. Obviously, a lot of other people have covered it. Ruslan over on his channel has covered it. I highly recommend you go check out his videos and his coverage of it, because the cultural narrative surrounding it matters, and it matters that we as Christians learn how to think about these things objectively, right? And so you have a lot of stuff going on. Obviously, this is surrounding the trial regarding Tyler Robinson murdering Charlie Kirk. And ultimately, the reason the debate happened is because Candace Owens initially started spreading conspiracy theories about alternative things that might have happened to Charlie Kirk. And Andrew Wilson, I put in the title, is doing the Lord's work because he decided he was going to go after these things, and it matters. Everybody's calling Andrew Wilson a grifter. Oh, he's just profiting off the death of Charlie Kirk, all this nonsense. And no, he's actually doing the Lord's work. He's been doing this for free. Candace Owens got paid. He didn't, right? And he's going after these things because it matters. Justice being done for Erica Kirk and her family, right? that matters. And the lies that Candace is spreading harm that. Now, look, maybe you're someone who's on the side of Candace. Maybe you listen to her, you follow her, and you've bought into some of these things. And so what we're going to get into is pointing out, regardless of where you stand on the issues, she objectively lost this debate. Right now, look, let's put my bias out there. I'm a big Andrew Wilson fan. I've been following him for a while. I was already biased in his favor prior to the debate. You can say, well, of course, of course you think he won. And look, there can be reasonable discussions to have about that, right? Andrew himself said during the debate, specifically regarding the evidence against Tyler Robinson, look, there's reasonable people that can find it convincing, and there's reasonable people that might not find it convincing. Fair enough. Right? And then, of course, and we see this all the time in Christian atheist debates, the atheists always think the atheist destroyed the Christians always think the Christian destroyed the atheist. Of course, people who have their biases, who are on a team, are going to think their person destroyed the other one, right? That's reasonable too, right? So this isn't just about me fanboying for Andrew and saying, well, of course he destroyed her, right? Because the people on her side are saying the same thing in reverse. But the reason this matters is objectivity does matter. And it just goes to show when she so clearly lost the debate. We're going to go through some clips here and we're going to look at it. Even if you are somebody who does agree with Candace and does agree with maybe some of her alternative theories here, and Steven Crowder is going to point this out when we look at him later, you guys need a new champion, right? Because as you'll see in this debate, as soon as it was her turn to answer for the claims she's made, again, beyond just not finding the evidence against Tyler Robinson convincing, Andrew concedes that that might be a reasonable position for somebody to hold. But she's made positive claims outside of that. These crazy alternative reality theories. And she either walked them back, contradicted herself on them, or just simply refused to answer for them and could give no evidence for them. And that's why objectivity matters here. It's not just about people aren't allowed to root for their girl in this case, but it's about, hey, even if you're somebody on her side who does believe in those things, you need a new champion. She's not going to be the one to do it. And so we're going to look through a couple things here. We're going to start with Andrew's opening statement to kind of set the stage here. And then for the other clips we look at, we're actually going to be looking at Steven Crowder's coverage of it because his commentary is invaluable, right? He provides live fact checks, contexts for things that we need to see. And just in case, you're somebody who again is following this, Andrew said this, like the first 48 hours after the debate, the size of the audience is so different. Of course, her audiences and the people putting out her narrative were all clipping the part where at the very end, she asks Andrew to name all 7 of the charges and he has a momentary blank and he can't recall them, right? And so then that's what they ran with, right? That was the first 48 hours of the popular news coverage on this was, he doesn't know what he's talking about. He doesn't know the charges. But that was all they had. And now that we're seeing a lot of other people, like I said, like Ruslan or other people coming in and covering it, we're seeing what the actual substance of the debate was, which was she simply could provide no evidence. Some of her claims. And again, this is not only is this just outside of the discussion about the evidence for or against Tyler Robinson being guilty. Steven Crowder also talked about this on his show, which is these aren't even conspiracies, right? Conspiracies are not all true, but conspiracies, generally speaking, are like a real thing, right? The government has all kinds of laws about conspiracies, and conspiracies usually rely on a gap in knowledge, but they do have a logical sequence of events that where people are drawing logical inferences from the data. And the data in actual conspiracies are facts on the ground that everybody on all sides of an issue might agree on, but there's gaps in the knowledge, and then the conspiracy comes in to fill the gap. Again, that doesn't mean every single one of them is true. I'm not claiming that, but at least there's a legitimate structure for how conspiracies work. What she's putting forth are not even conspiracies. They're just alternate realities. right? About things that people don't agree on, things that she's just made up, things that she said and then doesn't want to back it up, doesn't have any evidence for, and he will even walk back her claims, as we'll see here. And so as we're going through this, I want you to kind of keep that in mind, right? That she's made insane claims. She's not just said, I don't find the evidence for Tyler Robinson or against Tyler Robinson compelling. She's made claims of Erica Kirk or TPUSA being involved, complicit in his murder. Things like Israel and France being complicit in it. It's no evidence. And then things that Crowder points out they didn't even get to in the debate, like the fact that she went on a whole rant about a communist Mormon beehive cult, right? Training Tyler Robinson, right? She made claims about Egyptian planes, got all of the times wrong, said she was going to walk it back on her show and never did. So there's so many things that she's just not being accountable for, right? And those kinds of things matter because, again, when we're talking about being objective here, it just goes to show that all the people going out and saying Candace destroyed Andrew, she completely annihilated him, those kinds of people are more akin to a cult than a following, right? It's blind allegiance to Candace, complete blind allegiance without any care for the evidence. Because if you really yourself genuinely believed those claims and thought there was evidence for them, then you need to go find somebody who's actually going to provide it, or you need to go provide it yourself. To blindly put your faith in someone like Candace who refuses to put that evidence forward, that just goes to show that you're not someone who cares about evidence. And so we're going to kind of have that that's what I like to do. I like to provide that meta conversation. Andrew hates meta conversations, but that's kind of what I want to do on the show, is because it can help you to think through these issues rationally. And so we're going to get into Andrew's opening statement. Let me bring in the screen here because this will help set some context for what the debate was supposed to be. And then I'm going to provide some thoughts afterward. So
that being said, Andrew, your claim is overwhelming evidence that Tyler Robinson killed Charlie Kirk. Opening statements, opening comments.
Sure. And what I mean by overwhelming is I just find it very convincing. That's I think that's what most people mean when they say overwhelming evidence. So I have a brief opening statement. On September 10th, 2025, Charlie Kirk was murdered. Many of you already know a lot about the events which occurred after Kirk's death. You remember the ghoulish laughter, celebrations, and madness we saw from leftists all over, from TikTok invasions, debates, posts on social media, destruction of memorials, and things like this. Within weeks of Kirk's death, a cottage industry began to form, peddling various alternative theories on how he died. What special interest may have killed him, what nations were involved, and was our own government one of them? Because this was the first nationwide traumatic event in Gen Z's lifetime, the demand for answers was severe and palpable. The leading theory from the conspiracy verse is that Israel worked with the United States government to murder Charlie Kirk. Within a day or two of Kirk's death, Ian Carroll claimed that Israel killed Charlie Kirk, and the conspiracy caught on like wildfire. This theory was built on one misleading piece of evidence, that in his final days, on or around September 8th, Charlie sent a text message reading, "Jewish donors play into all the stereotypes. I cannot and will not be bullied like this, leaving me no choice but to leave the pro-Israel cause." This was sent in the context of a platforming dispute regarding Tucker Carlson. From this scintilla of misleading information, it was speculated that Israel killed Charlie Kirk because he would have successfully opposed the Iranian war. Now, that's a fun theory, and who doesn't like a good, fun conspiracy theory? I like them. But there is no evidence that Israel actually killed Charlie Kirk. And if Candace has some, I'd like her to actually show it to me. I'm open to suggestions, but to date, there hasn't been any. There is, however, tons of evidence.
yeah, and notice that, sorry, I accidentally clicked there. That one thing, again, we're going to focus on a separate portion for this, but inferences if you're going to draw an inference from some data, there has to be a logical chain that leads from said piece of data to the inference you're drawing. What Candace likes to do is just make guesses when there's let's say, incomplete data. Oh, there's incomplete data on this, therefore we can just make guesses about it, right? So that's going to become a key thing. And again, as far as this channel goes beyond just the specifics of the debates we review, in training you how to actually think and debate, that is going to be a really important part to keep track of.
Evidence that a leftist killed Charlie Kirk, just as Charlie feared they would. I believe Charlie Kirk, and I have the receipts. No, I didn't have a dream where he came to me and told me that the left killed him. No, he didn't come to me a dream and say, Candace Owens betrayed him. That never happened. In fact, I don't need dreams of any kind because I hold in my possession never before seen messages from Charlie Kirk to the security team on September 9th, 2025. I'm going to share the message with you today, which is the first time this information's ever been publicly revealed. On September 9th, Charlie's security team wrote to him, yes, law enforcement has been fully supportive and agreed to a security plan and posture. Tomorrow's event will be covered by both my team and the campus PD. If additional support is required, patrol units will be available. I have 11 on site. Charlie responded with this, okay, great. Remind them that they are there for one person's security only, because I'm somewhat worried the left is trying to kill me. That was a message sent September 9th. Whatever could he have meant by that? Well, I think he meant exactly what he said, that he was worried the left was going to try to kill him. Now, we'll discuss this more later on in the debate, and maybe I have more never before seen evidence that exposes just how wrong and...
Right. And again, when we're talking about drawing inferences, like what's more reasonable and logical? The fact that Charlie didn't actually, right, like go against Israel's interests, but simply expressed frustration with the donor class there. Or what Andrew just brought up, this fear that the left was the one putting his life in danger. And again, we have all the background context of this is why Steven Crowder, who was doing the Change My Minds, which is where Charlie Kirk got the inspiration for, his Prove Me Wrong series. Steven Crowder had to stop the Change My Minds because of the threats, because of the assaults, because of people, making threats and like actually assaulting him. And that became so dangerous, he had to stop. So it's not even just this text, but there's a whole background of actual evidence that the left is dangerous and they would go after these people. So again, when we're talking about inferences, they need to actually have a logical chain to the inference you're drawing from the data.
And in my opinion, idiotic many of these conspiracy theories have been. But that's what happens when you rely on what's called the evidence of the gaps. In other words, they don't have evidence. They seem to just make up evidence. And what do they make up? Well, in my opinion, kind of whatever lined the pockets. And I think it's ghoulish to profit off of the death of a good man. But we came here today to debate. And so let's get to it.
Which I would just like to point out Andrew's doing the opposite of, right? This whole online thing of people going after Andrew. Oh, look, he's just profiting off of debating about Charlie Kirk. It's like, no, the other people are doing it. And Andrew's the one being like, look, you guys are providing these crazy theories with no evidence that can actually have negative ramifications on actual justice being done. And so Andrew's the one going out and debating these people to prove that they don't have any evidence for him. And by the way, if they did, he would be open to hearing it. But because you need actual evidence if you're going to interfere with the trial, with implications that are this serious, right? And people want to point out that Andrew, has his Give Send Go link to fund him. It's because he had to pay Candace, right? So how is it that Andrew's profiting because he's asking for? He asked for the money to pay Candace. She's the one who actually profited off of this, right? So we're going to continue here.
The debate topic today is 1, my belief that there's overwhelming evidence that Tyler Robinson killed Charlie Kirk, and 2, Candace's belief that there's overwhelming evidence that Tyler Robinson was a patsy and didn't kill Charlie Kirk. In sum, the audience is going to decide who has more evidence supporting their theory. My theory is that the state is correct that Tyler Robinson is the killer, at least based on evidence so far, and Candace's theory that Tyler Robinson is not the killer and he's a patsy set up by the feds. To be clear, this is not a question of reasonable doubt. If it was reasonable doubt, and that's all it was, and that's all Candace was proffering, I wouldn't even be here having the debate with her. It's fair to have doubts, as a trial has yet to occur, and the state hasn't even begun to try to prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. But Candace makes a more forceful claim. She claims that there's more evidence that Tyler is not guilty of murder and was set up as a patsy than there is for the state's case. And I just think that that's absurd. And she will not be able to demonstrate that in any way. In fact, she has almost no real evidence at all of her theory, whereas my theory is supported by compelling witness testimony, physical evidence, multiple confessions, all of which are independently compelling, but which are even more convincing as each piece of evidence corroborates the others. You'll notice the term overwhelming was included in both theories. This is because Candace demanded I defend my use of that term, which I think is fair, in describing the evidence against Tyler Robinson. She, on the other hand, only wanted to defend her theory as merely viable. That is, until I showed her clips in which she said she believed the evidence of her theory, that Tyler Robinson's a patsy, was supported by overwhelming evidence. Only then did she agree to defend that position. Regardless, we're both defending the claim that there's overwhelming evidence on our side, so it's worth defining that term. When I say the evidence against Robinson's overwhelming, all I'm saying is that I mean that as of right now, I find it very convincing. I see almost no evidence at all, only speculation on verified claims and suggestions of things that could merely be hypothetically possible. Dreams, vibes, feelings, things like this. Almost done, by the way. I have no problem defending the state's case and welcome Candace bringing up any challenges she would like. But if I'm honest, the reason I was willing to pay the $300,000 for this debate was to finally have a chance for someone to demand Candace be held accountable for the unbelievable theories and claims she's been making. Candace's investigation is indistinguishable from a leftist operation. She couldn't be doing more damage to the right if she were trying. She uses her considerable platform to relentlessly attack one of the most influential conservative outreach organizations for young people, and she's making a mockery of the online right-wing commentary class.
Yeah, so real quick, I'm going to address some of the comments here. Candace following a call by not only the secretaries. Remember, I specified specifically the followers who are insisting, oh, she destroyed Andrew, she annihilated him, when that's objectively not the case, right? I was talking about specific people with a blind allegiance to her regardless of the evidence. This is funny. He talks about, oh, you know, how is he doing God's work when he's judging Candace's heart? Look, I'm throughout this video, especially when we get to the Crowder, we're going to provide the receipts that she is knowingly lying and contradicting herself. And so, like, yeah, you kind of can use biblical principles there to judge someone's intentions. And again, this is back to what I said earlier. Candace has a lot of evidence. She didn't provide any. If she has a lot of evidence, why didn't she provide any in the debate? And this explicitly just refused to. I'm not saying, oh, she provided what she thought was evidence and I happen to disagree. She outright refuses to. Again, we're going to get to that later in the debate, and this is exactly what I mean by a cult-like following, just insisting, oh, she clearly won, she clearly has a lot of evidence, then this was her opportunity to provide it. She didn't do it. So let's continue here.
She's harming Republicans in an election year by dividing them. She's attacking the very organization Charlie spent his life building. And she's attacking the people he loved, including his wife. And it cost me $300,000. But today, I hope that she finally answers for some of that.
Now, real quick, she's going to make a big to-do about being all holier than thou, and I don't do character assassinations, and I'm not into the rhetoric, and oh, I respect you, Andrew, so much for showing up. But let's listen to her response to his opening there.
Thank you, Andrew. Candace?
Did you get it out of your system?
I did.
Okay, great. Well, I'm not going to.
There, and then she goes on to basically say, well, I'm not going to prattle about it, or I'm not going to do this or that. And then just goes to prattle. She said she wants to get right into the evidence, and then that's not actually what ends up happening. So that's kind of the setup. Now, I do want to address real quick what is the supposed structure for this, right? Andrews claims that there's overwhelming evidence that Tyler Robinson did it. Candace has her explicit claims of alternative theories. The way that this was supposed to work was, there's a 3.5 hour debate or whatever. Candace gets the first half to cross-examine Andrew on his claims and get him to provide evidence. And then the second half is for Andrew to cross-examine her on her claims, right? Now, again, whether you agree with Andrew or not is irrelevant. The point is he sits under fire, he answers, he provides evidence for his theories. You might disagree, you might think, it's not sufficient, whatever, but he honors his end of the agreement there, right? He presents evidence, he argues for it, he defends his claims, and we're going to point out that as soon as it shifts to her, she preempts it by saying, the debate's not really happening anymore. Now it's just a conversation. I don't really have to give you any evidence, right? We're going to see that later. But again, one of the things that I like to do, again, in evaluating meta conversations, or doing the meta conversation and evaluating things to teach you how to think, is focusing on the logic of what people are saying. And often people can talk past each other because they have different ideas of what's going on. And so I am going to focus specifically on a section where they're talking about the fingerprint evidence, because it's going to get into a logical inference from data to a potential conclusion versus I'm just guessing because there's insufficient data at the moment, right? That's going to become important. And so now, again, I'm going to be looking at Steven Crowder's live coverage of it, because his commentary is where he's providing live fact checks and reasonable ways to interpret what's going on in the debate. So I'm going to pull that up.
Very, very good shot. I know this for a fact.
Rifles is private.
This is derailing.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And I was an NRA instructor for many, many, many
Okay.
years
So,
alongside my gun shop.
As with your expertise,
Mhm.
when she gave testimony on the stand, Samantha Carner, that there was dust and there was debris
Mhm.
that was found in the gun barrel.
Yep.
And then when we had the person who, and this was, I believe, Caitlin Oliver, who explained painfully about the DNA, the prints.
Well, let's start with a point at a time.
I'm not done. You said something, so I'm going to finish my thought, right?
You want to do a point at a time?
No, well, sure. If you want to respond to,
Well,
but I want you to respond to 2 points.
debris.
I want you to start with 2 points.
Okay.
Dust and
Mhm.
debris.
That's the comedy we get looking at Crowder's coverage.
In the gun barrel.
Yeah.
Secondly, the fact that there were 5 sets of prints, 5 plus actually by the end of the testimony, 5 sets of prints for which we already had the woman who worked for the FBI forensics testify that above 2 prints, if you're taking a sample, it's no longer a science, right? She testified that when they took the sample of what was on the trigger, they saw 5 plus prints. And among those 5 plus prints, Tyler Robinson's was the most degraded.
Mhm.
So I would like you to explain how Tyler Robinson's prints could be the most
We'll see
degraded
Andrew's
when she
response, and
said,
if it's not
actually,
adequate, we'll fact
you
check
could
this,
have
guys. Be ready.
DNA on something that you've touched. You could have DNA on something that you've never touched. And to get DNA degradation, they've looked at pieces, items 20, 40 years on that don't have degradation. Yet Tyler Robinson's prints, amongst 5 plus other prints, were the most degraded on that weapon.
Yeah. So let's get into all 3 of the claims. First, with debris. When it comes to debris, firing a rifle doesn't always blow the debris out of the barrel.
Okay, that
So
you think there could be debris and dust.
Yeah.
He
Oh,
just
thanks for
fired the weapon.
mispronouncing.
Yes, of course.
Not only that, he left it in a forest. Now, I don't know if you agree with me, but if you leave a rifle in a wooded area,
Fact check, bring it
it's
up.
also
Can
possible that
can
debris could get
a
in that way.
firearm
But
be fired
I'm
and
not
there
even
still
sure
be
that that's
debris
the
in
case.
a
It's
rifle
far
afterwards?
more
Just
likely.
I
Yes,
know
of course.
the answer.
Fire
Just bring it
shot
up
is gonna
definitively
blow the
so we
debris
can
out,
provide the
but it
reference
often doesn't.
on our page for the audience. The
You'll
answer is, of
find
course,
that
yes.
if you-
But
if
bring
you
it up
take
so we have a source.
Grandpappy's, dirty rifle and it's all dusty inside the bore and you go fire it, you'll often look down the bore and there's still dust.
Okay.
Happens all the time.
Okay. And the prints?
Yeah. So the prints, we don't know all of the details on just yet.
We do. It was excruciatingly long. testimony on the
We
prints.
don't, because they haven't gone to trial. So we don't know on the print front, but Tyler Robinson's DNA was on there. You made the claim that Lance Twig's DNA was on there and it was not.
Well, when she gave the
Fact check.
testimony, no, first
check,
let's
true.
go to your first
Bring
point.
it
That's
up.
wrong. We can get a fact check on that. What do you
Candace
mean you
making the
don't
claim of
know
Lance
until
Twigg.
it goes to trial about the degraded prints?
Dustin
She
Rifle,
testified.
Lance
This
Twigg.
is the person who took the prints.
Yes, but the problem is that inside of this particular testimony, you agree with me that there's going to be much more of the DNA analysis in the trial, right?
But you also would agree that her fact is not going to change, that among the prints, his was the most degraded.
Even
so I'm
if-
asking you to
but
address that. How could that be
here,
possible?
Let's give it, let's just grant this for a second as
This
a
part's important.
possibility that his fingerprints were degraded.
It's not a possibility. It's a fact. The person who took
hang
it.
on. I'm just granting it for the sake of argument.
You should grant it because it's a fact that
so
she
now,
presented.
So now it's granted. So what?
What do you mean? So what?
Yeah. So what? What does that prove?
It proves that if his prints were the most degraded amongst 5 of them,
Mhm.
you're going to have to explain how that's possible if he's the one that recently fired the weapon.
Yeah. So
But just so you know, in context, him saying "so what" is based because she made the claim that Tyler Robinson was actually a patsy, right? Meaning, Tyler Robinson was set up. So that's the context for him saying, "Okay, his fingerprints were degraded. So what?" This gets into the question of how do you get that inference? What is the logical chain that leads from degraded fingerprints, even if you grant it? Which Crowder's going to fact check that, so stay tuned for that. To he was a patsy. That's the context of that. So keep that in mind.
wait a second. You're saying that it's an impossibility that if his fingerprints are the most degraded.
I'm telling you
if
to
that's the
explain it.
case-
You're the gunsmith.
Well,
so
wait a
explain it.
second. How would a gunsmith give an analysis on fingerprints or DNA? Do you think that I work in a DNA laboratory
So
with
your answer
fingerprints?
is I don't know. You can just say you don't know.
But
You
I
don't
did.
have to.
But I did.
No, you said so what? So
Yeah,
say
so-
I don't know. I
but what would
actually don't
that-
have an
what would
explanation for that,
prove,
Candace.
though, is my question.
Well, I think that what it would prove is that it is a more viable theory that people who had stronger prints on the gun
Mhm.
may
Wait, the
have
Lance
used
Twigg
it more
claim and then dust
recently.
out of a gun?
Did they say who else had fingerprints?
They
on the gun?
they
Okay.
named Matt.
Give it to me really
Robinson.
quickly.
Oh,
Just
no,
out
no,
of-
not yet. Sorry,
Okay.
sorry. sorry.
And this was a
I can
part
hang up if I
of
need
the
to.
testimony where she was speaking about how they got samples of elimination samples from the home of Amber Robinson,
Mhm.
Matt Robinson, and Lance Twiggs. Those were the 3 names they named.
So are you saying that Twig's
Would you like me to
fingerprints-
finish my statement?
So yeah, just real quick. You know who else doesn't know how a preliminary hearing works? Is Candace Owens, right? That's a segment in the debate where she just claims that everything in a preliminary hearing is hearsay. Everything in a preliminary hearing is hearsay. That's not true. The preliminary hearing is for them putting forth everything, and they're determining, okay, what counts as evidence, what is hearsay that is unreliable, so we're not going to allow it in the official trial, or what is reliable hearsay, so we are going to allow it. And again, to go back to what the first thing I said, what is the evidence, right? That's what the preliminary hearing is for. She's just saying, oh no, it's all hearsay. So again, here's the thing, is like, it sounds like you should be the one, if you're so sure, going out and debating guys like Andrew and doing this, because Candace is not the one that you should be getting behind. You need a new champion, or you be the champion, right? If you're so sure about this, which is kind of the whole point of this video, is Candace Owens doesn't provide what you seem to think is the sufficient evidence. So yeah, let's get back in here.
I just want to make sure I'm clarifying.
I'm trying to finish the answer, but it can't be clarified until the answer comes out of my mouth.
Okay,
So
go ahead.
this was a portion of her testimony
Mhm.
where she was explaining how they got elimination samples from the home. And she named Matt Robinson, Amber Robinson, and Lance Twiggs as the elimination samples that she was using. And so she explicitly said, some of them, so we can assume 2 out of the 3,
Mhm.
were their prints were found on the gun. She explicitly named Matt Robinson as someone who had prints on the gun, and then said there were 5 people that they had taken that sample from. And again, what's also relevant here is the earlier testimony, which came from the FBI forensics analyst, I believe it was on day 2, where she said that when you're using those mixtures and those samples and you get up to 5+, it's really hard to make any sort of a determination. So both of those things are relevant. If you can't explain why his prints are the most degraded and you're saying he is the shooter, it's not really a so what. It's an open-ended question that people have a right to pursue. It's not a conspiracy. It's actually proof of my claim that there's evidence that he was set up as a patsy.
That wouldn't prove anything about
There it
being
is.
a
There's the
patsy.
claim.
It said it's evidence to support the claim that
That's
he
some
could
fact check
have
here.
been set up
Okay.
as a patsy.
So this is why I said earlier, so what? Because
I have
even if
gun
it's the
debris right here. It
case,
took me about
this
12
doesn't have an
seconds.
explanation for it yet. that doesn't actually give you any evidence in
Give
your
me the
corner
quick
for
fact
Tyler
checks.
Robinson.
DNA on the
Pat's-
towel
Okay,
matched
you
to
have
two
it on
people.
the
Jennifer Falmina with the State Bureau of Investigation testified. One was Robinson's roommate, Lance Twiggs, and the other was very likely Robinson. She said Twiggs, a key figure in the prosecution's case, will not testify in person this week, but prosecutors have said they plan to introduce a recorded statement.
I'm saying that it could be Matt Robinson, it could be Amber Robinson. That sort of information
No,
is going to
no
come out during
testimony
the
though.
trial.
That's not
How
the
would that
relevant
tie
part.
into
Argue that
the
Lance Twiggs' DNA was on the gun,
Because if
only
this
the
is
towel.
most
That's
degree
important.
prints and the information that I shared on my
So fact
platform
check.
is true.
Yes.
False.
That this gun was given to Tyler Robinson as an heirloom.
There's not a fact check false on that. But again, back to this part. Notice you tried to play both sides there, which is, look, there's a question here. His DNA is the most degraded. So, hey, it's reasonable to ask questions. Okay, that part fair. But then when you make the positive claim, therefore Patsy, that is not a logical jump. That is not a logical inference. Right? So that's what they're going to hone in on here. And that's what I want to point out.
had conversation with members of the Robinson family, Twiggs family, both of them. You know,
Okay.
like I said,
And
we're
then you
not
can
just
bring up
dreaming.
Hunter Ed right there.
and
Of
if
course,
we're having
after
those
any gun
conversations,
fires,
then
there can still be debris in the barrel. As a matter of fact, it's a common warning because you don't want to fire when there's debris there. It could cause increased pressure, and that pressure can continue to increase as the debris can remain in the barrel. In some cases, build up more. You guys can bring it up. I put it there in the map.
because he's the firstborn.
Yep.
So, but he's not much of a shooter, is what I was told. And so he has this because he inherited it essentially. So if I get something from my grandpa and I put it up on the shelf and I own this, you could see that could be.
How do we get to the Patsy part?
Oh, you don't
Exactly.
Get to the end of the sentence. So how could we get to the Patsy part
Okay,
if I
I'll
can't get to the end of the
wait.
sentence?
Right. Notice she does, and that's the theme throughout this way. She does most of the talking. She prattles on and on and on, and then anytime he wants to make a point, it's like, oh, well, you got to let me finish. You got to let me finish. So he just did that. What he just did there was, he's like, okay, fine, I'll wait.
Patiently till we get to
So
the
that
Patsy
could be a
part.
reasonable explanation as to why there was dust in the barrel, because he doesn't often shoot this weapon and he is indeed a fisher. And it could also be a reasonable explanation for why we have Matt Robinson's prints on this. Obviously, Lance Twiggs, even if he has prints on things, they live together, that doesn't really mean anything. But that could demonstrate that somebody took his weapon and put it somewhere. His prints are the most degraded. Somebody else's prints, there's more presence of somebody else's prints, and that could demonstrate that somebody is taking items from his house and putting it into
But it
various
also
places.
could demonstrate nothing. So the problem that you have here is that this is pure conjecture.
No,
This is not evidence that Tyler Robinson is a patsy. It's only evidence that you have conjectured up that, well, if it's the case that these are the more degraded prints, then therefore that means must be patsy because dad's fingerprints on gun.
I didn't say must be
Describe
patsy.
how this actually links in to Robinson being a patsy.
Okay, I just described that for you, so I can explain it to you, but I can't understand it for you, so I'm going to move on from that.
And remember, she's above the insults, everything, right? No, all she likes, you'll see. Again, that's the theme. If you go watch the full debate, and I would encourage watching Crowder's coverage, too. After, she loves to play the victim, but he's right. And this is why Andrew's great at debating, is because he's going to hone on that question: how do you get from most degraded fingerprints to Patsy? There has to be some kind of logical change. She's not going to provide one.
But to just go back to your point about this is not evidence.
Did anyone else
you
understand
can't
how
make
that proves
claim
that he's a
because
patsy?
The entire basis for why
That
you think
potentially
that there's evidence for
Other
Tyler
people involved
Robinson being
may
the
have
person who
tried
took the
to
shot is
clear
based off of a hearing
prints, or
under
that his prints were the
Utah
least
1102
prominent. Is that
rules,
about what I've heard?
meaning that they are doing the exact same thing that I am doing.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is the state. You said
Here's
you're here
that,
to represent the
website,
state.
by
Well,
the
did
way.
you watch the preliminary
Well, no, I didn't
hearing?
say I was here to
Terrible idea.
represent the state.
The state's position you think is strong and
No.
convincing.
What I'm
okay?
here to do is represent my own opinion,
You
which is
said in
that
your opening statement,
based on the evidence presented so far by the state,
the state has
that I find it
presented
convincing.
evidence
Mhm.
under Utah's 1102 rule.
But this doesn't demonstrate any patsy.
No, that's very
behavior.
important because that rule is hearsay. So you can't say at the same time,
Great.
Candace, you're not allowed
Uh-huh.
to. And what that means under the Utah rule, which I'm sure you know, because I'm sure you watched the preliminary hearing and yourself understand what that means, is that
This is
the
what I was saying
entire
earlier. She
hearing was
doesn't
hearsay.
understand
It means
this.
none of that information that was presented is going to be allowed. The majority of it, the overwhelming majority of it is not going to be allowed at the trial. They're allowed to present.
Well, if it's all hearsay, why would any of it be allowed in the trial? Because again, it's not simply hearsay being presented. It's evidence, reliable hearsay, and then they're determining with the hearsay what's reliable, what's not, and they're determining what's the evidence that's definitely going to be allowed. So she doesn't even, she just said it was incoherent.
when it's just a probative
I
hearing.
don't think all the evidence that was put in
Fact
was
check
hearsay.
false. I believe what she's trying to say.
You didn't
Fact
watch
check
this
that
case.
rule. And what I
Not
believe
only
what she's
that,
trying to say is when you have a preliminary hearing, they are determining what would be considered hearsay versus what would be admitted as evidence.
Exactly.
They want to go there. So they said there's a medical examiner's explanation of the shooting that's in the back. Rob, if you want to pull it up, and then Candace, if anybody from your team wants to pull something up, no problem as well, but they're requesting it. If you guys got it, pull it up so we can show it. And in the interim, is that it?
Yeah. So I'll read this.
Just what are we looking at, just so we know?
Yeah. So I would,
Yeah, so
that'd be
the-
an extreme
this
fact
says,
check and get that to
bullet wound is
Gerald.
part of it.
She just said, as you know, the rule means that it is all hearsay, right? Everyone heard that? No,
Incorrect.
that's not what the rule is. The preliminary hearing is used to determine what is hearsay and what would be admitted as evidence. By the way, every single thing that she has said, for example, my source, my phone call, would be hearsay and not admitted as evidence.
Correct.
Coroner's report would be admitted as evidence. Eyewitness testimony, if they're determined to be valid and have been there and could be corroborated with security cameras, would be admitted as evidence. Hearsay
Correct.
would not. It doesn't mean that the entire thing is hearsay. Yes, Noodles, were you about to say something?
Oh, no. Yeah, they're going to be adding more things to the live fact check for you, so you should have it there in the doc. for you.
The summary of the examination is that he was shot.
Okay.
That was what they were pulling that up for.
Okay, and I'm not disputing that he could have been hit with a projectile. We're not disputing that, so I don't know why this was brought up as a fact check. Could you bring up 1102 Utah rule? Because this is an unbelievable point that you're making by saying that I am not allowed to infer off of evidence.
You can infer. I'm trying to
That's
follow
not what
the
he's saying.
inference
But no, but
capacity.
your entire
Watch
reason,
this. This is
you
important.
asserted that you believe there's overwhelming evidence on the basis of what we saw in the
Correct.
preliminary hearing. The entire preliminary hearing was hearsay.
Yeah, I'm fine with your inferences.
But no, you just literally said I couldn't do that. Yes, I can.
No, I didn't. I'm
The
just saying
entire
from your
preliminary hearing
inference, how
fact
do we
check
get to
was
pass
not
it?
hearsay. The
This
entire
is how
preliminary
you
hearing
got
is
to
to
Shooter.
determine
Tyler
what
Robinson
is
did it. No,
hearsay.
no,
I
you
didn't
got to
get to
Tyler
just
Robinson
shoot her
did it
from
all.
that.
That's why
Yes,
you have
did.
preliminary hearings.
Again, this is something important.
So this is something she's going to harp on. She's going to say, "Oh, you're saying I'm not allowed to make inferences." No, you can make inferences. He's going to have to reiterate this over and over and over because she's not going to understand it. You're allowed to make inferences, but inferences means that there's a logical chain. And he's going to give an example of that, and I'm going to follow up with another example. A guess, just asserting something is not an inference. It's not a logical inference. She has not established a logical chain from degraded fingerprints to Patsy. Right? She needs more than that. So he's drilling down on that. He's trying to ask, okay, how do we get there? Where's the logical inference? And then she's going to go, oh, so you're saying I can't make inferences? No, but you're going to see them arguing over this because she's not getting that.
So we should pull up a fact check about what the 1102 Utah, and under their constitution, for the sake of a preliminary hearing,
Yeah.
they do not have to have hard evidence. They don't have to put people on the
I
trial,
agree they
swear
don't
them
have
in.
to.
But no, that's why the entire hearing was basically
And
hearsay.
according
Officer
to the
Bagwell
But
rule,
not
saying-
all of it, like I said.
Reliable
The
hearsay, meaning the legal definition, meaning there isn't enough corroborating evidence for it to be considered hard evidence, is admissible at preliminary criminal examination.
Correct.
Okay, so they are determining the level of evidence, basically the credence that it will be given. It's not to say that the entire preliminary hearing is hearsay. That's not what the rule is. She's either not understanding it or lying. We'll have that reference available. Link in the description.
Hour debate. Actually, maybe it was more than an hour debate before he sat,
There you
and
go.
they said this is not going to be allowed. You wouldn't even be allowed to do this. We'd be able to cross-examine him. The questions that they're asking, Lance, are all leading. And what did he say? Well, I'm the magistrate under Utah Constitution. 1102. It is my job to allow all of this, so we can see if the state has enough here that we can then move to a trial, which will then. They would not allow this stuff. They would say we get to cross-examine Lance. Lance
But
just
you're
can't
arguing
willy-nilly
things I'm not
say,
disputing.
but the entire substance of your argument is that people can't infer off of evidence. That's
No,
what you're saying
it's
to
not.
me. When you say, Candace,
here,
you
I'll
can't
give you
talk
the
about the degraded
argument
prints, which is a
now.
fact.
Yeah, I'm not
and then
saying
infer
that.
off of that
Didn't say that.
Tyler could have been a patsy.
You're
I
just
am telling
literally
you,
making stuff up. So
I'm
here's
not
what the
making stuff
position
up.
is.
I'm
I'm
not making
asking
stuff
this.
up. I'm
have
saying
Rule 1102
that I
ready.
think you.
I'm
Let's
just
pull that up.
trying to
Let's
pull
pull
out
that up. I'm
1102.
doing
Get there from the
exactly what the
inference.
state did.
Okay.
I'm looking at a piece of evidence,
Again, this is Prattle. She's not doing what the state did.
and I am saying.
But you're not showing me how you get there.
Can you
from the
describe to the
inference.
audience what Rule
Yes.
1102
So this,
means?
just so everybody who's watching this at home understands what I'm saying, even if he doesn't. What Andrew is arguing is that I don't have the right to extrapolate from
Never
a
made that
fact
argument.
like
Just making it up.
you-
Just purely
No, he's questioning how are you extrapolating? Where's this inference coming from? You can't just make an assertion, right? And then so her rebuttal is, oh no, I'm just doing what the state did. It's ridiculous.
Making it up. I'm asking based on
Andrew,
If she tries to say that Rule 1102 says hearsay is all admissible, or that it's all hearsay, that's a lie. And I'll
preliminary
show you.
examinations. The entire preliminary hearing that you just saw was on the basis of reliable hearsay. And what that means essentially
Not true.
is the people who are making the
Fact
statements can
check,
just
extreme
say,
fact check, not true.
Patrick told me that he did this on
Not
Monday.
all
Patrick's not
hearsay
here.
is
And
admissible,
that is-
and
they can allow
not
that into the hearing.
everything
That's
presented
because
was
it's
hearsay.
just meant to be probative. And so it's the state saying, here's what we have inferred. So you are allowed to take a piece of evidence and then you are allowed to infer off of that evidence. Okay. Case in
Thing
point, that's a
nobody's
demonstration that's a demonstration of what I just did. I said the prints were the
It's
most
not what you just did.
degraded off of Tyler Robinson. And from that, what I am inferring is that it's plausible that Tyler Robinson was set up.
that doesn't.
Okay.
That's
Sure.
the point in contention.
That
Right, that's the point of contention. So notice she went from degraded fingerprints to Patsy. Now degraded fingerprints to, well, it's plausibly set up. In other words, she's kind of having to back off it a little bit and going, well, it's just plausible. That's still not an inference or a logical inference because she's still not going. What she's saying is that, oh, it opens up the room for something. Okay, but what? What does it open up the room for? And you can't just insert a guess without any evidence and think that that is a logical inference to draw. This is, again, why Andrew is great at this, because he's lasering in on this.
That's not a point in contention. That's
the point in contention.
It's not a point in contention. If you're saying it's a
It
point,
is the point in contention.
it's not the point in contention. I'm telling you that was what the entire hearing allowed for. So the evidence that he is
Great, but
describing,
we're asking you
that
now.
he is using to
Mhm.
argue his case, is all based on inference, not fact.
Not
Great.
true.
Inference, not fact. So
We're
what they
just-
are inferring off of the
Not
facts.
true.
So
Nope.
again, we're going to take this, and I'm just going to even grant it because it's irrelevant. I'm asking how you get to the inference that even if you dispute that piece of evidence, that means Patsy. I'm looking
Exactly.
for a logical chain for how you get to that inference.
What I am telling you is it's the exact same way that when you tweeted, I think that this evidence is overwhelming. When they say that looks like Tyler Robinson's car, he drives a similar car. Okay. They are inferring that that's Tyler Robinson.
No, they're
Walk
matching
me through the
license plates,
inference.
car, model,
Yeah, I
year,
understand.
and him
It's
exiting the
not a
vehicle.
fact. It's not a fact.
Exactly. And again, if you go watch the whole debate, there's another thing she does, and this is actually known that this, like, I've had Jay Warner Wallace on the show, who's a cold case homicide detective, and he's talked about this kind of thing happening in courts. Is like, look, when you have 100 pieces of evidence that point to the same conclusion, right? That's overwhelming evidence in favor of the conclusion. And then what will happen is people will take one piece of evidence, isolate it from the rest, and be like, well, I have some questions about this, as though that provides reasonable doubt. And it's true that any one of those pieces of evidence, isolated from context and isolated from the others, may be insufficient. But when you have 80, 100 pieces of evidence like this, that's when it becomes overwhelmingly in favor of the conclusion. Because then, in order for any of those evidences to point to something different, you have to have an alternate theory for each single one, instead of just the one unifying conclusion that all the evidence points to. And so this is also something that she does there. But again, notice he just asked her, hey, okay, what is the logical what is the logical inference that leads from degraded fingerprints to Patsy? And instead of answering, she won't answer it. She's just going to go, no, I'm just doing the same thing the court's doing. I'm doing the same thing you're doing. And she's going to claim that Andrew just doesn't want her to draw inferences. And he's just saying, no, how do you get to the inference? You can draw inferences all you want. You just have to explain how.
When you show
Fact
a
check.
blurry image, which you kept citing that we have
I'm
images.
talking about your inference that the fingerprints, even if they're degraded, equals Patsy. How do you
I
get
didn't
that
say
inference?
I didn't say it equals Patsy. I think it is enough evidence that it should be explored, which is exactly what this preliminary
There's
was in the
but
inverse.
That's not.
That's where she kind of waffles back and forth. She waffles back and forth between well, I'm just asking questions to making positive claims, and then she conflates the two so that it can seem like, well, the positive claims have reasonable evidence, when what she's really pointing to is a deficiency of evidence in one circumstance, and saying, well, see, that gives room to ask questions, and then because she can ask questions, that somehow gives her the right to then jump to wild speculations. Not how that works.
But in dispute, what's in dispute is when you said, I'm using this as evidence that he could have been a patsy. I'm asking, how do you get the inference to patsy from that?
Because what I am saying is that it shows that somebody else had more DNA presence on that gun than Tyler Robinson did. So it is plausible, which is all they're doing. They're presenting plausibility based off of the facts.
Mhm.
Okay. It is plausible that somebody just took his gun. and
Josh,
put it
remember
there.
that day we
That's
went
it.
to the
Those are
range
equally-
and
Yeah,
that's how it works.
And is there
you
equally
used my
100
Walther and I
other
used your
plausible
911? 1911?
Yeah.
Sorry, not 911.
Yeah, that-
But my shooting quality was level of 911.
This is how the court process works.
So if
just
it
Could go either way. More of your
explosives,
DNA on my gun, more of my
explosives,
DNA on yours. That's just how that
why
works.
is it that we should
If
go
someone
with
grabs it,
Because
hands
we're
it,
out,
yeah.
you know, the guns are putting down on the tables. There's
Doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
Well, it's hot and you could be sweaty.
sweating
and,
more.
you know,
Sure.
I thought that was the whole defense, your whole claim
No,
today.
my whole claim was that there is
Let me give you one
more
more thing.
evidence that he is set up.
Maybe. I don't know if you know this. I'm going to make a suggestion. Tyler Robinson shot Charlie Kirk. I don't know if you know, one of the most common things, you ever watch movies where spies or assassins kills? They do this.
They try to wipe the evidence. Yeah.
I'm going to look at the evidence.
So he could have wiped the gun where his prints were, whereas the last person who gave him the gun didn't wipe. Would that be reasonable inference? Would it be a reasonable inference?
On your own Twitter that what you found to be convincing.
And that was a moment I actually really wanted to get to through all of this. Hold on, let me see if I can make myself full screen here again. That was a point I wanted to get to. Like, again, we could go on listening to that. She's never actually going to give any kind of logical reason for the inference that she's drawing. Right? There has to be a logical chain from one thing to another. He gives the example later in the debate where he says, look, if I'm 20 minutes away from work and I know work starts in 5 minutes, it's a logical inference to draw that I'll be late for work. Right? And you can see inherently the logical chain there. Right? There's not just this wild gap of, well, look, this might be slightly insufficient. So now I have the right to ask questions, to now just jumping to wild speculations, which is what she's doing. And what Crowder even presented there was way more reasonable. Like, that's what you see in every movie is people try to wipe their fingerprints off. Right. And Crowder, again, I would highly encourage you go watch him, because he's going to point out there's a difference between degradation, which is just like natural wear over time, and what is actually going on with the weapon, which is, again, would look more like he tried to wipe them off or something else could have happened. And so, like, that's at least just as reasonable what she's doing, if not way more, right? Because then it doesn't contradict any of the other evidence that's presented that Tyler Robinson is in fact guilty. So I guess just to give another example of this, and this is going to be a silly example, but sometimes you use extreme examples to make the point. Like, suppose you wake up one morning and there's just a package on your porch, and you didn't see a truck. You didn't see anybody leave the package on your porch. You just see the package on your porch, and you just go, "Well, I don't see a truck, so there's a lack of evidence that there was a truck here. It must have fallen out of a plane." Is that a logical inference to draw? Or are you just making like a wild speculation based on, well, I didn't see the truck. Well, yeah, probably dropped off when you were sleeping or something, right? Like, that's silly. That's more akin to what she's doing. Whereas an actual logical inference might be, there's mounds of snow, there's no tire prints, and your neighbor literally comes out and says they saw a plane flying overhead and it looked like there were things falling out of the plane. Now, that doesn't now logically conclude definitely the package on your porch came from a plane, but there's at least now some pieces of logical chain you can start to establish, right? When we're talking about inferences, that's what you need. She never gives them, ever. So, yeah, thank you for everybody commenting. I'm trying to go through them as I'm listening to this and address what I think is relevant, but I do appreciate the engagement from everybody. I am going to fast forward a bit in this debate to highlight another section. So I'm going to see if I can find this here. Give me 1 second. I need to start getting these things. All right, so yeah, they're going to jump right back into this here. So I'm going to bring this back up.
I'm pretty sure the lead DA would go, you got work to do. You up that number. You know what I mean? So Andrew's being very cordial. I think he's being very honest about this. So.
Me too. So, all right, listen, I need you back at your legal post. I appreciate it. George the Greek, we are back here with act number 3.
I have a bunch of questions for you, and I want to make it super.
All right. So, okay. So yeah, this is what I wanted to point out is notice he sat there for the entire first hour and a half of the debate, allowed her to cross-examine him. He made his case. Now the second half of the debate is to be for him to cross-examine her on the positive claims she's made. Again, though, the wild alternate reality theories that I mentioned at the top of the show. Notice as soon as it's time for her to defend, this is again why I say even if you agree with her and even if you think there's tons of evidence for this, you need a new champion, right? Candace isn't going to do it. Look how she tries to play victim here and just shift the entire narrative of the debate as soon as it's her turn to ask questions.
Painless, right? So no traps, no gotchas. I'm just going to ask him direct, and I think that as long as they're not
Robinson
loaded,
loves
if
the
they're
traps.
loaded, you should not respond yes or no. But as long as they're not loaded, if I just directly ask them, I'm hoping that you're just giving me a direct answer. So here's the questions that I have.
Wait, before we get into that, I would like to just reply to that. So just to be clear, we agreed to debate our claims, and then I agreed publicly that I have no issues having a conversation with you about other things that I've discussed that were outside of the court hearing and things like other evidence that's come across our lap and things that we've been speaking about. But I just do want to make it clear to viewers that for whatever reason, you think that you have a right to sort of depose me.
I'm not deposing. I just want to ask you some questions.
You literally said that I want to be able to question
Well, this is a meta conversation.
Right,
We're having a
but
meta
okay, so
debate.
now we're transcending.
Claims victim
let's use the
status.
words
There's no
to
That's a
use the
drink.
words
That's
that you're
transcending.
saying.
That's what a debate is. That's what a debate is. It's you present claims, you get cross-examined on those claims, and you cross-examine each other on those claims. That's what a debate is. And she's now trying to shift the narrative, play victim of, well, the debate part is over. We'll have a conversation about it. And so maybe I'll say the things I think, again, backing off the fact that she has made these claims, these positive claims, as though these things are, they're definitely the case. And there's a ton of evidence for them. Now she wants to back off that and just make it about, well, I'll discuss theories I have and things I think. I'm allowed to think after all, but the debate's over. No, the debate's not over. This is still the debate. And she just wants to run away from it here and play victim.
But this is what you're doing, right? So
Okay.
this part to me feels like a
So
bit of
am I
a.
allowed to ask the questions?
I've already said you can ask questions,
Then
but I
let me
made it
ask
very
them.
clear to you
Yeah.
via email and with you in conversation that we should be speaking. This
Yeah, I
isn't
know,
like
but
you
I
get to
wanna-
sit.
I wanna ask you
if you
some
want to
questions.
depose me, you should join
I'm not
Brigitte
deposing
Macron's
you.
defense team.
This
But
is
you're like,
part-
I'm
this
just
is a
going to ask questions.
legitimate
Can you
part-
answer it? Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know what you're going to ask. And
I
I'm going
know.
to
And
answer
if
as
you
I
have
see
to
fit
say
because I'm
Yeah, and remember, again, if you watch the entire first half of that debate, she went after him. Like she really went after him. And now she's saying you can't do the same thing to me. You need to become an attorney and drag me into court if you want to cross-examine me, even though she just got to do it to him. It's silly.
I get it.
Yeah.
Oh,
Just
this
so we're clear.
is why she doesn't understand what a trial is.
Yeah. I'm just direct.
Or a
Because you kept
debate.
saying I'm Joe Rogan. They have no evidence. They have no evidence. And now you're like, let's move away from the evidence.
You
Let's talk about transcendentals.
yeah, okay. Anyway, so
you got a new
direct
buzzword.
question, super easy. Was Lance Twiggs DNA on the rifle, as far as you know?
We can't say that for certainty.
As far as you know.
I already answered that in the first part. We can't say that for certainty. I told you the context of which they spoke about those things.
So
was-
no, as far as you know.
We can't say that for certainty until we know what other the 5 sets of prints were on.
So that would
there.
be no.
Man,
as far
Fact
as you
check,
know.
no.
Take a
We
position.
can't say that for certainty.
You can say no as far as I know for certain.
We can't say that for certainty. I actually,
You can say that for certainty.
She's certain Tyler Robinson did not kill Charlie Kirk, but she's not certain that the forensic examination showed there was no DNA of Twigs on that gun. By the way, you can bring it up. We fact checked that earlier.
We're not debating anymore. We're having a conversation. So I already addressed that in the first half.
Right. So again, claims that she's made that she now doesn't want to answer for. So now she's just going to play ignorant, like, well, we don't know for sure. Instead of just, and then, again, she'll virtue signal later on in the debate about, oh, well, if I make a claim and it turns out to be wrong, then I just, I retract it or I do this. And we're seeing here now she has a chance to do that and she won't.
Half of this about why.
No, we're still
there's-
definitely debating. This is still.
No, it's not a debate.
This is
Now
inclined
this
to
is you
your-
saying I want to probe
Yeah.
things
Where's
that
the-
sit
where's
outside
the
of the
goalpost?
evidence. I actually already
That you
addressed it as
stated.
you asked me.
Uh-huh.
You're not going to go like where you're
Okay.
sitting and I'm on trial. I'm not on trial.
Okay, great.
drink.
So
Let's
you
talk
can
about
have a
the,
conversation
let's
as
talk
we.
about
No, that's the wrong one.
Right. But he was on trial the first half of the debate.
Let's talk about the Foreign Legion.
Sure.
Was the Foreign Legion, do you believe, trying to kill you?
Yes, that's why I reported it to the correct officials in government. That's what I was told, and I handed over that information to Tulsi Gabbard's office.
What's your best piece of evidence for that?
Well, it was
Positive evidence.
It was told to me by somebody who is high up in the French government. I passed off that information to Tulsi Gabbard's office. I also passed it off to Trump's office, Donald Trump's office.
Unreliable hearsay.
And that's
evidence.
all I can tell you. I wouldn't be able to probe any evidence because I don't have the power to do that. I'm not the federal government. And I would also like to say that this becomes this other piece of what you do.
Let me prove to you.
When people say,
we said to you, there were engravings on the bullets of Tyler Robinson's gun. Anti-fascist were one of them. Duck, you sucker, or catch fascist, and some weird trans gaming thing, OWO stuff, stares at bulge. Okay, we made that, and then we were able to prove it to you because that was in evidence. See how that happens? You make the claim, then the inference is confirmed. She made the claim, never confirmed.
She's going after him.
Yeah, and that's important too. Like that happened very early on after this, was that because people can claim, like Candace does, oh, we have inside sources. And look, anonymity for your sources makes a lot of sense, right? People have to be protected, right? You can't have people under threat, right, for providing evidence. Like it's not a matter of anonymity, but and Crowder will get to this, is that it's a matter of, do we then have the evidence to support what the source said? This whole thing, we're not even going to watch this whole section because I really wanted you to see how she kind of tries to turn the tables once she's under cross-examination. Say it's not a debate anymore, play victim. Right, we're actually going to move to Rumble here in a few minutes. But he does this thing again where, oh, I have sources that say this. I have sources that say that. Crowder, when this whole thing first happened, Charlie Kirk, had a source. Somebody leaked to him the engravings on the bullets. But then what happens is he doesn't just say, oh, I have my inside source and they're going to remain anonymous. And here's what they say. It was then followed up with actual evidence that proved that that was in fact the case. She does this thing with anonymous sources, relies on that for everything, for all her theories, and then never provides evidence. Evidence never comes out to support it, but she just stands on it. Right? This is what I said earlier, which is she just has nothing. She has nothing. She won't provide the evidence. She pulls back from some of her claims. We're actually going to move to Rumble here in a minute if you want to continue watching. Link is in the description. If you go in the description, there's a couple links to obviously Crowder's coverage, the original debate itself. But that first link you see will take you directly to this exact same video on Rumble. Download the Rumble app if you want to finish watching this episode. And yeah, you'll get into some more of the conclusions where Crowder's actually going to play live things of her then versus her now. It's one thing for me to just to say that she's contradicting herself. He's going to provide the receipts of where she said one thing before, now she's saying a totally different thing. So conclusion here on YouTube, if you don't continue watching, is you guys, if you support Candace Owens' side of things here, her side of the story here, you guys need a new champion. Someone who's actually going to provide evidence, someone who knows how to debate, who isn't going to play victim and walk back all their claims, doesn't even understand how a preliminary hearing works, doesn't understand what actual logical inferences are, right? Silly person. And we see also that that's all she's done in the videos following this debate is played victim, all kinds of things. You can go to The Crucible. He's made videos addressing this. So yeah, continue to watch over on Rumble. We are going to cover the second half of the clips I have pertaining to this debate. And we will be here live next week, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, with Eric Hernandez to review a video from Matt Delhunty critiquing him in a debate he recently had. So definitely come back next week for that. Until then, I will see you all over on Rumble. So, bye, YouTube.